So my name is Derek Pegram. I'm the head coach at Nampa High School. Over this time, being at home the last few months, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. And one of the podcasts that I've really been following is Flying Coach with Pete Carroll and Steve Kerr. And I was out in my yard cutting grass and listened to this podcast, and I just had this idea of this would be really great to reach out to other coaches and just learn from them selfishly, right? And then got the idea to reach out to Idaho Sports and see if they might be interested in picking it up, and they were all about it. So this is the first one we're doing, and today we have NAI Division II Coach of the Year, Colby Blaine, here to talk some hoop. Colby, first of all, thank you for taking the time out and being with us.
You bet. And I'm excited to be here. I'm even more excited to know that you listen to podcasts while you mow your lawn, because that's the exact same thing I do.
Well, I used to listen to music, but I'm kind of getting away. I can't relate to that too much anymore. So it's podcasts or it's books on tape or something.
No, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So first off, what are you guys doing right now? What's it look like? What are you guys able to do right now?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question for every program. And I've learned not to compare myself to other programs because everybody has a different situation. But the interesting thing for us, honestly, is, most basketball coaches, are in their off season right now. Our season's 7 months long, from September to middle of March. Our expectation is always to be at that national tournament. And so I'm a big believer in making sure they get time away from us. So that's usually the summertime. We usually spend June together with camps, and then we take the rest of summer off. And so we're kind of in a normal routine where I'm letting the guys, they're working jobs, they're back at home. So there's nothing specific that we actually are doing. We do have some at-home workouts that the guys have been provided in terms of weights and all that. But there's nothing crazy that we're trying to do outside of a normal year.
Yeah, well, good. That works out for you then a little bit.
Yeah.
When one of the things I was thinking, I'm trying to think of questions to ask, and I'm preparing for this. And I'm sure you've been asked this a million times. But this last year, you guys, you're Cascade Conference champions, and you're on a 25-game win streak, ranked number 1. You win your first game, against Northwestern at the tournament. And then it comes to a halt, it stops. And I was just kind of curious, number one, how did you find that out? How did you find out, okay, this is actually not going to go on anymore? And number two, how did you inform your team, just because of the situation you guys were in? There's a chance to do something really special, especially those seniors, and to hear that news would be terrible. So I was just curious to see how you handled it and what you told your team.
Sure. Well, I think the one thing that we all rely on is leaders and coaches and administration is experience. And I didn't have any experience, and nobody else had any experience with how to handle the situation, how to do it. And so I'm not sure if what we did was the best or not the best, but I'll give you a little background. So we played on, I don't remember exactly the dates, but we played on a Wednesday night. I think it was maybe the 11th of March. We played at 7 o'clock. We had the marquee game on the big court. Won the game. When we got done with the game, we're walking in the locker room, and my AD came up to me and said, "Hey, just so you know, tomorrow they're only letting 100 fans per team in." And so I was like, you know what? That's fine. We can, if we get a play, that's okay. We'll make that work. We go to bed. We wake up the next day on Thursday. We have the day off. My assistant, Shelby Lindley, came into my hotel room at 10 a.m. while we were watching film and said, "Do you think they're going to shut this thing down?" And I said, "No way. We're already here. We're going to play it." We pack up. We're heading to lunch at noon. And as we're driving to lunch, I'm looking through Twitter and just flipping through, and all of a sudden I see the NAI Twitter handle posts tournament canceled. All championships in motion right now are canceled. So for me at that moment, we try to be super transparent with our players. I've tried to be really transparent with them moving into this next year already, because we deserve to have that trust together. And so I immediately just told our van that I was with. I was probably with 6 or 7 people in my van. I said, guys, you're probably going to see this, but this is what we're seeing, and I don't know what's going on, but I just want you to know. So then we got into lunch. My AD confirmed with me that the tournament was canceled and that we were looking to leave as fast as we could get out of there. And I just walked into the room that we were in at the Red Lobster and just said, guys, this is the deal. So we didn't try to, hide it much. It happened quick, and we were out of there by Friday morning. Our flights were changed, and we were gone by Friday morning. So crazy deal.
Yeah, that's difficult, man. And yeah, I don't know if there is a perfect way of how to respond to that, right? No one's ever been through any of this stuff that we're going through right now. So I think, college coaches, high school coaches, we're all doing stuff on the fly that we've never done before.
Right.
But yeah, I think the immediate information that you gave to your players, especially because nowadays we all have a phone anyways, right? And we're all going to get information quickly anyways. So yeah, it sounded like, obviously you handled that really well. And yeah, a tough situation to be in, man, for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, I know a little bit about your background, just from talking to you, being on the road with you with Select. But I was just, curious if you could just share your background as a player, where you played maybe, and then how you got into coaching.
Yeah. So grew up here in Boise, went to Boise High. My dad was a teacher at North Junior High and was a coach for a long time. My sister and brother both played at Boise High before me. So I grew up in that gym, in the old gym, which is now the new gym. But I grew up there as a young first, second, third grader, going to every game. So played at Boise High. That was kind of a passion. And had a chance after Boise High to move on. Played 2 years at Blue Mountain Community College in Pendleton, Oregon. Loved my experience. It was a great chance for me to play. It was the right level. It was just a great situation. But when my 2 years were up there, I decided to transfer to University of Montana Western in Dillon, Montana, NAIA school in the Frontier Conference. And I elected to walk on there. I didn't have any scholarship opportunities, but I wanted to keep playing. So I walked on at Montana Western, and I've told people this. I'm not afraid to tell my story. It's made me who I am. And so, long story short, I'm in the team picture. I'm on the team. We have an inter-squad scrimmage game, middle of October. And I remember I turned the ball over 8 times. And come Monday, I get a call from our head coach. He calls me in and he just says, hey, he goes, I know that you want to be a coach. Why don't we get you started early? And I said, great. Sounds good to me. So I practiced that day knowing it was going to be my last practice. And then the next day I had a whistle and I was a coach. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was hard to be told, hey, maybe you don't quite fit what we need in our program as a player, but let's make the transition. So I started as a student assistant at Montana Western. Great experience. They ended up taking me on every road trip, and I got a lot of responsibility. I was there 2 years. Then I moved down to College of Southern Idaho, junior college, the winningest junior college program in the country. Had spent 5 years there, 3 as a volunteer, and then 2 as a full-time assistant. Was a great experience. We won the 2011 NJCAA National Championship. I got to coach 2 guys that went to the NBA draft and players that went all over the country to high major schools. So that was a great experience for me. But after those 5 years, I had an opportunity to come work for Scott Garson at College of Idaho here in Caldwell, Idaho, and move kind of back to my network. And that was an incredible experience to work for Coach Garson, who had been at UCLA, who had been at Utah, and who had great network and connections and a great ideology on the game, super positive. He taught me a whole different way to look at how to be a basketball coach. So I was here with him for 4 years as an assistant, and then he left to go to Santa Clara as an assistant, and they bumped me up as the head coach 2 years ago. So that's kind of how I've made my journey here.
Sweet. When you talk a little bit about when you were a volunteer assistant, because when I got the opportunity to kind of do something similar at Lewis Clark State College. I was an assistant under Brian Orr with the women's program there, but it was unpaid. I was still going to school, so my day was wake up at 4:30, get to the gym because we had morning practices. Get to the gym, practice. After practice, do the weight room session. After that, you do your responsibilities as a college coach, right? You're reaching out to the hotels of the places you're going to go to. You're finding the best restaurants. You're recruiting, doing all that, and then because you're unpaid, after that, now I got to go to work. Now I have a job too. That now I got to go work 6 hours at the job, and then I'll wake up and do it all over again. So just kind of fill me in on your experience as a volunteer assistant.
Yeah. Well, as we all know, coaching is not easy. We all do it because we love it, and we have to find other avenues. But my 2 years in Dillon at Montana Western, I actually picked up 2 jobs. I'll give you some breakdowns on how I survived. So one, I was surviving off of just student loans. I take out a little bit extra just to survive. So I chose to do that myself. But I picked up 2 other jobs. I was a dishwasher at the Lion's Den restaurant, and I cleaned the bowling alley 3 times a week at 5 in the morning. And that put some extra money in my pocket to survive. So I did those 2 things when I was at Western. When I got to CSI, I was actually still working on my master's. I had done a 2-year program at Idaho State to get my master's degree in athletic administration. So once again, I was still taking out some student loans that I was surviving on, but summer camps were a big deal.
Yeah.
We wanted to grow those as large as we could so that we could make some extra funds for the year. I did what I called fall intensity camp, which was group workouts in the fall for every age group, boys and girls. I mean, you name it. And that was really good for me to make some extra money. So I did use the basketball avenue when I was at CSI to try to make some extra money. I will tell you, just as recently as being an assistant at C of I, even being a paid assistant, I was still vacuuming a business on the weekends just to put a little bit of extra money in my pockets, because it is a struggle to get where you really want to be, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And that you kind of talked about, the next thing I was going to flow into a little bit. I read a tweet that you sent out a few months ago about the moving up process, and just kind of what you did, what your background was to get you to the spot to be a head coach. And I think there's a misunderstanding with younger coaches maybe about how much it really takes to move up in the college game. And everything you have to do, like you were talking about, you have to have a side job because maybe as an assistant, you're not making enough money to live, right? Yeah. So just kind of talk about the things that you did, the camps and stuff to get to the spot to have that resume to put in front of an athletic director and get that job.
Sure. Well, I feel really lucky. I worked for 4 head coaches that all in their own niche and coaching career are Hall of Fame guys. 2 of them had won national junior college national championships. Steve Keller, who I worked for in Montana, has won like 6 state championships and been in 12 of them. And then working for Scott Garson, who had been at UCLA. And long story short, I got a lot of great advice from all of them, and they all conclude that, one of my favorite quotes is, "Don't chase money, chase winning, and money will chase you." So I was always a big believer in just investing in good programs. The reason I volunteered for 3 years at CSI is because my investment there is still paying itself back today. The people that I met, the players that I met, the coaches, the high school coaches, the AAU coaches, I'm still able to lean on those people for recruits, for advice, for anything. And so it was worth it for me to invest in a winning program here at the College of Idaho too. It's, I've been here 6 years now, instead of just taking another job because maybe I wanted, maybe a little bit bigger paycheck, or I wanted maybe a little bit bigger role. I chose to stay in a winning program so that because I believe that investment's going to pay itself off later. And so that's why I think I got to where I got at the age that I'm at. But the other big thing about, how I kind of got here is you got to be willing to do a lot of things for out the paycheck too. Working for Select AAU, I suggest anybody work for an AAU program. It doesn't matter who it is. Learning how to call timeouts, learning how to deal with parents and players and playing time, do substitutes, make a decision at the end of the game. I feel very comfortable as a head coach, having invested 10 years as an AAU coach. I feel comfortable as a college head coach, just having coached AAU games. So I think that investment was huge. I think it showed our administration, hey, he does understand how to handle some of those things. Yeah. But running the camps, running camps, it teaches you how to run a business. I mean, you got to problem solve. You got to deal with a lot of moving parts, and so it's just like running your own team.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a lot of little things that I did for no money, but I do think it's helped me become the head coach. In my early 30s.
Yeah. So when you were offered the head coaching position, is it something that you were ready for? Is it something that you were looking at? Like, as you were an assistant, were you like, okay, I think I'm ready for this, Yeah.
So everybody's got a different personality. My personality is if you would have asked me when I was in 7th grade if I could be a college head coach, I would have told you yes. Since I was in junior high, I knew I wanted to be a head collegiate coach. Yeah. So my confidence for that has always been there. I've always believed that that's what I'm destined for. And so I felt ready. I knew though, because I had some friends that have become head coaches, and they've always said nobody's ever ready. You're just in fact, I've called all my former head coaches and probably apologized to them for things, or just said, hey, I totally understand it now. Like one of my head coaches, Steve Gosar, used to always say, being a head coach is an out-of-body experience. And as an assistant, you can't understand it because you don't have that pressure on you. It just doesn't happen. And so I took in all that information, and when I became the head coach, I felt ready, but I knew that I was going to have to make those adjustments. And so I felt very lucky about having learned from a lot of good people in front of me. So yeah. In my opinion, it's been a pretty smooth transition, and I've been pretty happy with it.
That's great. That's a cool story. It's funny, when I kind of have a similar, you said in 7th grade, you knew you were going to be a college basketball coach. That's what you wanted to do. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a high school basketball coach. I remember my senior year in high school, in the yearbook, they ask you, what do you want to be in 10 years, right? Yeah. 90% of people took it as a joke. I want to be a Russian snowball fighter, the craziest answers. And under mine is high school basketball coach. So yeah, it's something I can relate to. That's pretty cool. So if you have an assistant coach who's getting to that point that you feel like, do you have that conversation with them? Like, hey, I think you need to be looking at opportunities to be a head coach, or are you just there for whatever they want and you're there to help them? What's that go through?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we're all products of our environment. And I go back to my leaders and my mentors that I've gotten to work for. They were all phenomenal about preparing me to be a head coach. Scott Garson did a great job of getting me involved in what head coaches spend a lot of time on. For me in our program, I spend a lot of time on fundraising, public events, practice planning, some of those things. And what Scott Garson started doing for me with, in his last couple of years, was getting me involved in that stuff. He would bring me to those events. And so I've begun to do that with our assistants. And Shelby Lindley is my top assistant, and is phenomenal. He's ready to be a head coach. He's as good as anybody in the country. And so we've been having the conversation for 2 years, and constantly, I'm inviting him to things and saying, hey, this would be a good opportunity for you to continue just to see maybe what I'm doing or what you're going to be doing here in the next year. But we constantly have the conversation, and I want our guys to move on. That's everybody always wanted me to move on, and I want to return that favor. We want to help guys move on. I'm not trying to have guys work for me for 10 years. It's 2-3 good years, and if you're ready, let's get you something good. So
Cool. Yeah, getting to know Shelby as well. He's a great coach, man. Just watching him do select, and then going to a couple of your guys' game, just watching him on the bench and just how often he's in your ear. I think that's what you want as a head coach, right? You want your assistant coaches in your ear giving you their opinions and their, what they're seeing. So, yeah, Shelby's a good one, man. You're lucky to have him.
I'll tell you this. I don't think, every assistant's in a different spot because every head coach is different. We all learn how to delegate at different rates. We all learn what we want to give up and what we don't want to give up. But no matter what tasks your head coach gives you, I can assure you that every assistant has more power in programs than they may realize.
Yeah.
If I could go back, and when I do go back at some point to be an assistant, one thing that I will do is I will compliment the head coach more when they do things that are good.
Yeah.
Because what I've realized is it's easy as an assistant to come in and say, hey, you need to handle it this way, or you need to play this person or whatever.
Yeah.
And as the head coach, when you make those decisions, you're always wondering, did I make the right choice? Did I, and yes, you want your assistants to tell you like, hey, I think we need to maybe change this. But if I could go back to being an assistant, I would walk in the head coach's office more and say, hey, you really handled the, so-and-so at practice really well yesterday. The way you communicated to him, or whatever, or hey, you had a great speech today in the, at the Rotary Club. Because I think people need that reassurance, and that's where assistants can play a big role. And for me, Shelby, I know that Shelby knows what he's talking about. So there are so many times in the game where he'll say, hey, we need to do this. Awesome. Let's do it. I'm in. I appreciate the suggestion. And so if you guys ever do come watch our game, Shelby actually runs all of our subs and he runs all of our out of bounds. Like, I don't sub our players during the game. Now, at the end of the day, I have the ultimate power.
Sure.
But Shelby and I are constantly in conversation, and he'll sit down and say, when I'm sitting next to him during the game or whatever, he'll say, hey, I'm going to sub this person at this time. Here's why. And 99% of the time, I tell him, great. The reason is because he knows what he's doing. Like he wants to make those decisions, and it helps me be a better coach when I can give him those responsibilities. So. Yeah,
and to be a head coach that, a couple things get taken off your plate during the middle of a game is huge, because it's hard. It's hard at the high school level. I can't imagine how hard it is at the college level. You're watching everything.
Yep.
So a couple things to be taken off your plate to someone you trust, you can't put a price on it. That's it's big time. So
absolutely.
When it comes to recruiting, I had a couple questions. Number one is, when you see a kid and you think that maybe he's above the NAIA Division II level, right? You're thinking, okay, this is a D2, D1 kid. Do you still approach them? Do you still look into them? How do you pick the kids that you recruit?
Yeah, that is a really good question and topic, because it comes up every year. It's hard to figure out, quote unquote, what level somebody is.
Sure.
Right? And the funny thing is, for us at the College of Idaho to compete for conference championships, national championships, our top 5 to 7 guys have to be good enough to play Division I basketball. If you took our starting lineup, I really believe that every one of them could contribute to a Division I program. I'm not saying maybe they could play 40 minutes and take them to the NCAA tournament, but they could contribute. They're good enough. Our point guard this year, Talon Pinckney, could have started for almost any, Big Sky school in the conference. So for us to be really good, we have to recruit guys that we think are, low major Division I guys or high D2 guys. And so it really is important that we do our research and we know, maybe what their recruitment's like. A lot of times, the truth is what happens, you'll hit the road in July and every coach is watching kids play. And so seniors, their recruitment will spike really quick and they'll have 5 or 6 schools. Well, then you get back, home in August and September, and a couple of those schools fall off because maybe they got another kid somewhere else. And so what we've learned is not to get too worried about if we think a kid is another level.
Sure.
Because a lot of times schools will fall off, and and then we end up recruiting a really good player that's going to be a future All-American for us, and so we feel like we've had success recruiting guys that maybe people think are higher than our level. But there's other things that go into that. Sometimes we get guys that maybe just haven't put weight on yet, or they're still maturing. They're late bloomers. And so evaluating that all the time is super important. I'll tell you, the most important thing we evaluate, though, I am a huge believer in recruiting winners. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I have a quick story for you about it. I was talking with Greg Graham, who former Boise State head coach, over Christmas, and he asked me, who do you guys recruit? Like, what do you like? Do you like length? Do you like athleticism? And I stumbled around the question. I couldn't figure it out. And so he started to, kind of direct me and tell me what he liked. And for 2 days after the conversation, I thought about it. And I came up in my own head. I was like, how do I answer that question? And what it came back to was, we recruit winners. Yes, we need talent. Yes, we want guys who can shoot. Yes, we want guys who can rebound. But at the end of the day, we're looking for guys who can fight adversity, guys who have stories of going through tough times and coming out on the other side without quitting.
Yeah.
Guys who have great reputations in their communities. Like, we have a young man on our team who's going to be a sophomore. And one of the biggest things that I loved about him in this valley was that he was friends with everybody at every school.
Yeah.
And so that tells me immediately, like, he's got this personality, this spirit about him that people appreciate, they like. Well, that's the guy I want on my team. He's a winner. He gets along with people. So we're constantly evaluating, stories like that in terms of trying to find the right guy.
Yeah, high character players. I think that's what separates those teams that make a run and those that don't, right? Because every team has got talent. If you're at the college level, you're probably a talented basketball player.
Yeah.
What's your character like, and how do you get along with your teammates, right? I mean, that always seems to kind of separate itself when it really matters.
Absolutely. And a big part, we learned this at CSI, but we still use it here at C of I. It's really important to find genuine people.
Yeah.
And what I mean, because you're going to find kids that are immature, that have some social, miscues, their time's still coming, you're going to find that. And a lot of times what happens is people write them off immediately. Like, oh, you don't want that kid. But when you really learn about what the individual's about, if they really care about people, like, they're not going to let you down at the end of the day, even if they maybe, they're the class clown and they, whatever, they act up in class or practice or whatever. Those are things that you can fix and you can grow through, as long as the individual cares about other people, cares about the team. And so I think we've done a really good job of pinpointing some really good basketball players that, just needed an environment to grow in, and then their talent just showcase themselves. Yeah.
Your roster has a lot of Idaho players on it, quite a few from this area specifically. What's the difference between recruiting Idaho and recruiting the Boise area in terms of, like, recruiting a kid from California or a kid from Washington or, wherever? What's the difference between, those two recruiting styles?
Yeah, well, the number one thing we deal with every high school basketball player is in Idaho is that the location. 90% of them, 90% of high school students believe they want to leave the state. That's what everybody's dream is. That's what college is, to leave and explore, right?
Yeah.
So every recruit that we sign here from Idaho, we've had to educate them on why it's okay to stay close to home. What are you really picking when you're coming to a college? What are you getting? What a lot of kids don't realize is just because they have a house in Meridian doesn't mean they're not going to be living at home when they come to College of Idaho. They're going to be in their dorm room. They're going to have their own space. They're going to get to explore the world and be on their own. Yeah. But what a lot of Idaho guys figure out in their first year or two is, man, it's really nice to be able to go home for Thanksgiving dinner or my brother's birthday or have my family at the game.
Yeah.
And all of our Idaho kids are really figuring that out. And I think that's why we just continue to get more and more from the Valley. what you get when you're recruiting out-of-state players is you got to really educate them on who we are. There's not, when you go down to California, we do have, or Seattle or Vegas, or, we have good connections there. We've had former players from those areas, but, a lot of people don't know a lot about our college when they're living in California. And so you got to really bring them up to speed quickly with that. The other thing too is, I truly believe you got to win your area no matter what school you're at. So for us, we want to win Idaho. We want the best players from Idaho. And so if you're in LA or you're in San Francisco and you're those D2 schools, they're trying to win their area too. So when you're recruiting out of state, you're always battling a couple other schools, good schools that maybe are closer to their niche and their home. So so it's a different dynamic when you're between in-state and out-of-state for sure.
Okay. One of the things that I really wanted to ask, just because I've seen you coach with select, and when you think about, here's a college basketball coach, a head college basketball coach, and now he's coaching high school kids, right? You're thinking maybe the intensity might not be there the same it normally would be. Maybe the effort, might be a little less. And that's the farthest thing from the truth, because I've seen you coach and you're after those refs, you're getting after it. And I know a little bit about the culture at the College of Idaho, but what is it, what's your passion? Where does it come from? And, cause you display it at every time I've seen you coach, you're displaying it. So I was just curious, what's the culture? How do you build that culture? The legacy driven culture that you guys always talk about.
Sure. Well, personally for me, I'm just a competitive dude. The funny part is it's not about winning and losing. If you really want to win, don't make it about winning and losing. That's what legacy driven is. Legacy driven is about learning to be your best self, giving back to others, investing in other people. And when you do that, you're going to get great returns back. And essentially, you're going to put yourself in a position to win.
Yeah.
But the truth is, for lack of better terms, is I'm competitive. Like, we all put in a ton of time and we want to prove that our time, we want to win the game. We want to prove that all the investment that we have, that we can showcase better than the other team. Now, granted, win or lose, as long as we executed our best selves, then I'm happy. But here's what it really comes down to: I might actually be more aggressive as an AAU coach than I am as a collegiate coach, and here's why. Or maybe in a camp setting with high school kids, I always tell my AAU teams, I only get 3 weeks with you. I get 3 weeks to teach you everything that you need to know, one, on the court, and more importantly, off the court, to get you to college.
Yeah.
When I'm with my college team, I get 7 months and up to 4 years. If I got my freshmen, I've got 4 years. So with my college team, it's okay to take a little bit longer with them. So it's a different environment. But when I got 3 weeks, there's no time to waste. So I jump into it immediately. And I just told a summer team this the other day. I've been very lucky to be a part of some fantastic experiences. I've got to coach 2 guys that have been to the NBA, many guys that have gone overseas. We have 8 players from the College of Idaho in the last 6 years playing overseas right now.
Yeah.
And so there's this standard, there's this expectation of, it's all I know. If you want to be the best basketball player possible, here's the standard, and I'm going to hold you to it. And I've seen it with my own eyes. And so when I jump in there with those AAU kids, it's, hey, we're not just playing the opponent across the table from us. We're playing for your college scholarship. We're playing for you to be an all-conference player, for you to play big minutes, for you to potentially be a pro in the future. So I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to teach you as much as I can. That's my motto. And here's what I can tell you about it. Yes, it's aggressive. If you've seen me, I am aggressive. There's no question about it. What I can tell you is those who make it through it have fantastic college experiences. If you can make it through the 3 weeks and succeed and find and enjoy the journey, I'm almost sure that you can do it in college. So guess what? We have 6 players that have played for me before. You know why? Because I know they can do it. I know that they can make it through the grind of a college year. And so that's what I'm trying to simulate by being aggressive, is simulate what you're going to get yourself into in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what you were talking about with coaching club ball is you have the opportunity to coach kids and kind of evaluate them at the same time. That's a pretty unique opportunity that you get. How did you get on with Select? Because I think you've been with them for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah. So I just found out, actually, I was doing the math. I'm the second oldest guy on their staff now. So I used to be the young guy 10 years ago. I was the young guy.
Yeah.
But I started in 2010. I had kind of known Clint and Vince Hordeman. In fact, my dad had played high school basketball for their dad at Meridian High School way back in the day. So I knew who they were, and I was at CSI at the time as a volunteer, and they were expanding their program. They had about 4 teams, I think, and they were looking for an extra coach or two, and they had asked me to come help them work a camp. And I didn't know, lo and behold, I didn't know it was actually like an interview. But I helped them with the camp. They liked how I organized things. They liked my energy. And at the end of the camp, Clint just said, "Hey, would you be interested in joining us for the summer with the team?" So I asked my head coach, and he thought it was a great idea. And I was worried. I always tell people, I was worried as a college coach about joining an AAU program, because it might appear like, oh, I'm biased towards one program, and I didn't want that. I want to be fair, and I want to evaluate everybody.
Yeah.
But I joined them, and what I realized was I really fell in love with the experience that we could have together. It was really well organized. It was great kids that were all there for the same reason. I felt being able to run my own team, to be able to call timeouts, do subs, all that stuff. And so I stuck with it. I think I took 1 year off between somewhere in the middle there, 1 summer off, but I've been with them for 10, 11 years now. And it's been the best thing I've done in my coaching career.
Wow. Yeah. I spent spring, not this last one, the one before, with Select, and it's a unique situation for a coach, because kind of like you talked about, where you have in the summer, you have 3 weeks where you're like nonstop with each other, 21 days. In the spring, it's, hey, we're going to Portland. Half your players you might not have met yet because they play in Montana or wherever. And then you get like a 45-minute practice session. Here we go. And then the next day you're playing 4 games. So it's a cool experience, and good for a coach to learn on the fly like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really taught me how to be more simple and what really matters, because I love doing everything. I love every set that I see, and I want to put them all in. But when you coach in a AAU setting, you don't have as much time. So you got to really be strategic about what information you're giving them so that they'll continue to play hard. Well, it's helped me understand it's okay to be simple. It's okay to not overwhelm them.
Yeah, for sure. I saw you speak at a clinic a little while ago, and you were talking about celebrating at practice, celebrating at a game, and then I listened to Andy Harrington speak on a different podcast a few days ago, and he was talking about one of the things he pulled from C of I that they do at Middleton is, regardless of the game, right? If they win, they bring their whole program in to celebrate it. And I found that interesting, because I think when you're talking to most coaches, and myself included, I found myself doing this as well. If there's a game you go into where you're like projecting it in your mind, okay, we should do really well in this game, and you end up not doing well, you go into that locker room holding that mentality, right? You're treating it like a loss, and the kids can feel that. And in a long season, I feel like that weighs on them, right? So, and I know he got it from C of I, so I was hoping you could talk about, regardless of the situation, the celebration that goes on in your program.
Yeah. So I'll give you the background story on it. It started when I was an assistant with Coach Garson. We had 2 fantastic years, 2015, 16, I think, or 14, 15. And then going into Coach Garson's 3rd year, we had a couple injuries. We had just some things that didn't work out for us, and we ended up having a year that wasn't a traditional year for our expectations. We ended up finishing 4th in league. I think we went 17-13. It was just kind of a grind.
Yeah.
And so going into the following year, so that would have been 4 complete seasons ago. We just made a decision, like, winning's hard, having fun and enjoying the journey. It's hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to remind me to come back to this tangent about how winning's hard and how it's hard to be a part of a really special program. But anyway, I'll get back to what we're talking about here. But we just came in after the first game, and Coach was excited. We had a new year, and we just started jumping up and down, and we didn't stop. And what we found was it's a blast to celebrate. Yes, maybe we didn't execute as well as we needed to or whatever, but we're here to learn together. So there's no reason to hang something over our heads if we didn't play as well as we wanted to, or if we did beat somebody by a lot. Let's enjoy the moment. Let's celebrate. And that's what we want our guys. We want them to, enjoy it. So we in practice, like, we expect celebration after drills, and that stuff is so much more important than any ball screen play you can put in,
Sure.
any block out drill you can do. Your players will execute those X and O strategies better if they're enjoying their experience. Doesn't mean you can't be serious, because, like you said, you've seen me coach and you've seen practice. We hold our guys accountable. We get after it.
Yeah.
But deep down inside their soul, they love what they're doing because they know that we're all celebrating together.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that sets you apart. Honestly, I think it does, because I feel like coaches spend a lot of time trying to find that set that they think is going to work, or find that rebounding drill that they didn't know existed, right? Instead, really, the important stuff is, hey, let's sit back and let's look at why, how can we make the drills that we already have work a little bit better? And it comes down to that celebrating. It comes down to having fun like that, because if these are all kids that we're talking about, right? From my high school level to the college level, they're young adults and they're kids, and you got to have fun with them. It's got to be fun. So
it'll wear on you way too fast, and it's hard to get it back. Like I said, we're 7 months. You can't be a hard ass for 7 months. It's just and coaches have proven that you can, but what happens by coaching out of fear is that your team at some point decides they're no longer fearful of the consequence, and they just want to be done with it.
Yeah.
So fear can win you some games. It can, but when you get to the end, you get to the conference tournament, your team's just done. They know if they lose, they're done, they're out. Let's just lose. Let's just be done with all this. What we take a lot of pride in is how we're executing at the end of the year. We want to be at our best at the end. We want to be our happiest, freshest, fresh minds, fresh bodies, and play our best. And I think what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years in our program is we are playing our best basketball at the end of the year every year.
Yeah.
But you do have to celebrate, in between.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. You told me to touch back on the winning is hard.
Yeah. So we tell all of our recruits this. We take a lot of pride in our program, just like you do in your program and anybody in their own programs, right? Everybody takes pride in their program. And we have we're very lucky. There are a lot of kids that are reaching out and want to play for us. And the first thing I tell them is, do you understand how hard it is to play in an elite program, in a winning program? Because what it looks like from the outsider, when you're watching our games, we got a full crowd, our kids are smiling, they're sharing the ball, they're diving on loose balls, they're celebrating. So it looks fun, and it is fun.
Yeah.
But the only way to be elite, the only way to have all that specialness is you gotta grind. Like behind the scenes, we practice so hard. Our kids practice and beat their bodies up, so hard. Then they got to go do schoolwork at an elite academic institution. They got to find time to eat. They got to sleep. They got to have a social life.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard, and you got to do it for 7 months. That's why you see a lot of juniors and seniors at the college level have a ton of success, and you see it at the high school level too. Freshmen and sophomores have a harder time because they might show up really well for 2 weeks and then they take a week off because they're exhausted.
Yeah.
And so as you get older, you learn, how do I show up every day and do it, at my best. But I don't think it's so much easier to be in a program that goes 15-15 because you're just, we win some, we lose some. The pressure that mounts in an elite program, we were lucky enough this year to win 25 in a row. The pressure that keeps getting put on your shoulders, if you allow it, is massive. I thought our guys did a great job of not allowing that pressure to get on their shoulders, but it very well could happen. So
for sure. Well, they're taking that lead from their coaches. So it would be, understanding why they did the things that they did. I got 2 more questions for you. And these are more like X's and O's questions. Your guys' defense, your guys' defensive philosophy, you guys fly around, you work. I see sometimes that you guys will go man-to-man, and then sometimes you'll go 2-3. Is there a strategy behind that? Is it, after makes, we're going to go 2-3, after misses, match up man, or what is the strategy behind that?
Yeah, so we're predominantly a matchup zone team. That's our foundation. I always talk about our foundation. What do we start in every time?
Yeah.
And we've been that way for 3 years now. This year we ended up being statistically the best defensive team in the country. We only gave up 39.7% from the field all year long as an average. So people have a hard time scoring against us. But so we're a matchup zone team. What the matchup zone has is a lot of man principles.
Yeah.
And so what you might see during a possession is at some point we might shift from our zone to a man in the middle of a possession. But those are some rules that we have broken down that we understand really well. What's happened to us this year is because we've done it for 3 years, we actually ran more man this year than we ever have.
Okay.
And I was probably about 30 to 35% of our season this year we ran man. The reason is some teams have really come up with some really good zone concepts that we just didn't want to deal with. So we said, hey, we're going to play in man.
Yeah.
The other reason is sometimes we just have better athletes and we need more pressure. It's a little bit of a strategic thing in the game. So we're just using both. But what I can tell you about using both is that it's really hard to coach against.
Yeah.
It's hard to prepare for as a coach in your mind. What we take a lot of pride in is other coaches don't get a lot of control of what they want to do in our games because you're constantly just switching back and forth. You're making them think, and so they got to rely on their players to make plays.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do, right? You want to dictate that tempo. You want to dictate, because teams, they run their sets and they practice their motion, and you're throwing a curveball at them and you're making them uncomfortable, stuff that they don't see in practice. No, that's good to know. Last question. And, before I ask this, I just, want to thank you for coming on. This is the reason why I wanted to do that show. I get to pick your brain. And then people who decide that they want to log in and watch this, good for them, because there's a lot, I think, that people can learn, high school coaches specifically around this area, that they can learn from you. So thank you for doing this. Favorite drills, a couple favorite drills that you have that are staples of your program that you do every single year, that is one that you have in your back pocket.
Good question.
Nice.
My favorite drill, and it's a little bit hard to explain, but when I became the head coach, I wanted to implement some more basic fundamentals into our program.
Yeah.
Jump stops, pass and catch, rebounding, but I didn't want to spend hours on it.
Sure.
And so I kind of felt like I met it in the middle. So we do what we call a 10-minute warm-up. And I'm a big believer in making sure your guys are warm. I think the first 30 minutes of practice are all things that are making sure your guys' ankles are warm, their knees are warm, their hips are warm, we compete, but that's usually a little bit later. So I love the 10-minute warm-up because it allows our guys to just get going. And so what the 10-minute warm-up is, I have probably 10 drills that I like that are either a minute or 2 minutes long. Okay. And I'll pick, I've gotten to where I know how long they all take. And so I pick 4, 5, 6 of them, knowing that we can get them in pretty close to that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so literally it's a 1 minute rebound and outlet drill. We get 2 lines, we throw it off the glass, we go up with 2 hands, we bring it down, we chin it, we pivot, and we outlet it.
Yeah.
And so we spend we're one of the best rebounding teams in the country. That's the only rebounding drill we do. Reach up with 2 hands and grab it. That's it.
Yeah.
And so for 1 minute, we're just emphasizing rebound the ball. And then when we get to live scrimmage, then we can really say, hey, you know, are you rebounding with 2 hands? You know, are you jump stop and pivoting? And so that's a 1 minute drill. And then immediately when that drill's done in 1 minute, I say the next one and we move right to the next one. So for 10 minutes, we're just going. And they're simple fundamental drills. They're jump stops, they're pivots, they're passing drills, they're finishing drills. We have a couple layup drills that we like to do just to have our guys finish a little bit better at the rim.
Yeah.
But you can make up any drill you want in that 10 minutes. And so I know, again, this isn't a very good explanation. I'm giving you my favorite drill and don't even know how to explain it that well. But if we have guys miss layups, we put a point on the board during it. If we have turnovers, I might start them over for 10 seconds. We have to get all these drills done in 10 minutes. When we're popping on a good day, we usually get them done within about 9 to 9.5 minutes. What it also teaches our guys is if we have a mistake, okay, we better fix it and move on and not dwell because we still have time to get it done.
Yeah.
If we don't get our drills done in 10 minutes, however many points are on the board from missed layups, we have down and backs for. So if we miss 10 layups, we're going 10 down and backs. That's not very fun.
Yeah.
If we do get the drills done before 10 minutes, I let somebody shoot a pressure free throw to wipe off the missed layups. So then we don't have to run. Nice. So it's kind of this fun game. It makes sure they're warm. We get all of our fundamentals in, and then we don't have to spend 10 minutes on jump stops and rebounding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been asked a couple times, like, what's your rebounding drill? It seems like everybody wants a rebounding drill, right? It's the one that you don't really spend a whole lot of time on, and it's the excuse you can use that rebound is just determination. So it's interesting to hear that that's what you guys do, and there you are. You're the best in the country. So that's awesome.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate it. I love talking hoops. This is a blast. For anybody who's watching, and Coach, I know you know this, but our practices are open. Our office is open, emails, phones. We love talking hoops. So don't be shy to come by and see what we do. And there's not a practice that is closed. I don't care when we are. I don't care if it's game day. Everybody's welcome to come see what we do.
That's great. Coach, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on.
You bet. You're the man. Thanks.
We'll talk to you later.
Yeah.